All right.
They served courageously during World War II. Now Nisei veterans share stories they've guarded for decades.
It's very meaningful, especially these older guys. It's a good way to preserve history.
World War I was known as the war to end all wars. A century later, its imprint on Seattle still exists in our economy and our democracy.
There's not an aspect of life you can look at that wasn't transformed.
It's a great comfort for veterans struggling with PTSD, how the healing power of music is saving lives. These stories and more are coming up next on CityStream. Hello, I'm Enrique Cerna, and welcome to CityStream from MOHAI, the Museum of History and Industry. As the nation prepares to honor military veterans, we have a special show that pays tribute to those currently in uniform and those who've served. We begin with a storied group from World War II, Japanese Americans known as Nisei veterans. Highly regarded for their bravery and sacrifice, very few share details of their life experiences. Photographer Shane Sato has been documenting these humble heroes for more than 20 years. It's led to a book filled with personal reflections that he calls Portraits of Courage. Producer Randy Ng has the story.
I've been working on this project for the past 20 years. It's probably the hardest thing I'll ever do in my life. For me, this project is to help other families to talk like my family never had the chance to. Good. And nice smile again.
If a picture is worth 1,000 words, then Shane Sato's are for words never spoken.
Look at you.
Yep. Look at me. Good. Okay, Shig, you're looking right here. A little more. Good.
For years, he's been taking portraits of World War II veterans from the famous 442nd Regimental Combat Team, the 100th Battalion, and the Military Intelligence Service. Those Japanese-American troops who courageously fought for the same country that had imprisoned many of them and their loved ones. And while most of us have heard their stories, their families have not.
My family, we never spoke very much. We didn't talk. My mom's side, I knew they went to camp. My mom would always say, oh, it's not a big deal. I was young. It didn't bother me too much. My dad would just not really say much. You know, as a kid, I started to believe that. I thought, oh, okay, it wasn't that important. History is not important.
History was lost on Shane. You see, after the war, it was common for the next generation of Asian Americans to assimilate, to blend in at all costs.
Your friends, as they board the bus to leave the center, are going to new experiences and to a better way of living.
I didn't think of myself as Japanese. I just thought of myself as American. I thought that every kid ate Swanson TV dinners and chicken pot pies. I do remember when I was in about the 4th or 5th grade, I was doing a school report on Japan. The teacher said, oh, Japanese, it's too many syllables, so just abbreviate it to Jap. I brought that paper home to my mom, and she looked at it, and she was really mad, and I couldn't figure it out. So I asked her, Mom, why are you so mad? It's just Jap. It's just a very bad word. You should never say that, nor should it ever be taught. And I said, why? What's wrong with Jap? Why can't I say it? Jap, 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 Jap. And she just went ballistic and said, that's what they said. That's what they called us when they took us away to camp. And I remember my focus changed then, and I said, camp? What's camp? How come I didn't get to go to camp? And she said, you don't want to go to camp.
So when an opportunity to photograph these fading heroes arose, Shane took a chance. Over time, he noticed a change in himself. The more pictures he took, the more he understood his family's struggle for acceptance in America. History finally began to weigh on him.
For me, it really strikes a chord because their story and the history is part of my family. To have to prove that they were loyal Americans to a country who actually put them in prison just because they were Japanese. Could I do that? And I have to say, I don't know if I could do that.
What's special about this book is that the pictures are mixed with those unspoken words, those stories and emotions many of the veterans kept just to themselves until now.
Right there. All right.
Is it on?
Yeah.
The Medal of Honor ribbon.
You know, for Christ's sake, I haven't seen you in a long time. We're joining the army again, I guess.
For the veterans, this is one last chance to put on their uniforms.
Can't believe that he's gained so much weight and nothing fits.
The fact that Jimmy came, I was super excited because I knew that would be the last time he ever puts on his colonel uniform. And he said he gained weight. He just got out of 10 cancer treatments. So he's eating well, which made me really happy that it didn't fit him.
This one fits.
This one does fit, yeah. This is going to be good. Oh, this is his jacket.
Wow, that's great. Once they had the uniforms on, it did change their persona. It did change how they felt.
Put it on. You forgot how heavy they were, didn't you?
It seemed like they were back in that time. They felt that pride, and they definitely had that strength. It showed a different side to them that they don't always show everybody. These are Nisei, Japanese men. Luckily, I'm able to somehow draw some of these emotions out. Otherwise, they would all just stand there motionless.
Pull that in through there.
We were up to his room and I said, well, that's a Class B uniform, you can wear that. He says, yeah. I think he was real proud to put it on.
The race against time for them to see the book is definitely now.
Frank Muromatsu, son of Sukoi.
Not long after his book was published, Shane was able to give his book to veterans and their families. The impact was immediate and profound.
Oh, I feel very proud. A little sad too. I miss him a lot.
The picture shows him perfectly. That's Frank.
That's when I used to be.
It was very meaningful, especially these older guys. I consider myself young at 91. It's a good way to preserve history.
I hope that we learn from our mistakes of the past and internment and anything that's close to that never happens again. This happened just 70 years ago. History can repeat itself if we don't continue and remember these stories. Many Nisei fought and died for my future. They went go for broke. And now it's my turn to carry the torch and help the younger generations remember them and keep their spirit alive.
Sato just finished photographing more veterans for his next book. He and oral historian Robert Horsting specifically sought out East Coast Nisei veterans. Their post-war experience was much different from those on the West Coast. For more information on Sato's work, just go to thegoforbrokespirit.com. Next on CityStream, World War I ended a century ago, but its impact is still being felt. Plus, a noted Seattle journalist shares family stories from that era. Welcome back to CityStream and MOHAI's new World War I exhibit. America's involvement began in the spring of 2017 with the declaration of war against Germany. 19 months later, it was over. As we mark the centennial of the armistice that ended what was called the Great War, you might wonder how that conflict shaped Seattle. Well, historians will tell you the impact was significant. It would affect Seattle and our state in many different ways, from our economy to organized labor, our right to protest, public health, and most importantly, the state of our democracy.
It was the war, the Great War, the war to end all wars, the war to make the world safe for democracy. And that's the way Seattle people thought about it.
The Great War would bring change and challenge to Seattle, but it would also be good for business.
So the Boeing Company incorporated in 1916, and it incorporated intentionally to build for war. Everyone could see that the future of war was in the air. Similarly, the Skinner and Eddy shipyard incorporated in 1916 too, and it employed 35,000 people at the high water mark, and it built more ships than any other shipyard in the United States. Central Puget Sound is really militarized by this war. The Navy at the Bremerton Naval Shipyard is very present in everyday life here.
More than 60,000 Washingtonians enlist to serve in the various branches of the military. Nationally, 2 million men volunteer and 2.8 million are drafted. An estimated 350,000 African Americans serve, along with Native Americans and others from communities of color. Women play a significant role in the war effort. Many don uniforms for the first time as part of support organizations. They serve as nurses on the Seattle home front and overseas.
This was a helmet that my grandfather, William Hazeltine, brought back from World War I. He picked it up on the battlefield. I think it was Verdun.
Crosscut columnist Knut Berger was 10 years old when his grandfather gave him this German helmet as a birthday gift.
I became interested in military history, partly because of his experiences in World War I.
The helmet was among the trunkloads of souvenirs his grandfather brought back from the battlefields of France.
Not only helmets and guns, he brought back a bunch of grenades of different kinds, and years later we found out that some of them were live, at least one that had been displayed on the wall that I remember as a child. He kept a diary. He took a lot of photos when he was over there.
William Ebenezer Hazeltine was in his 40s when he decided to join up to serve in World War I.
My favorite picture of him is he's standing in I think it looks like it's next to a bombed out German pillbox or something, and he's got one leg up and a big smile on his face, his helmet's on at a jaunty angle, and you can tell he's having a blast.
He served in General John Pershing's American Expeditionary Force, putting to good use his skills as an engineer.
His expertise was supply, making sure that the Army was supplied and figuring out how to supply it. He had absolutely zero doubts about, was it a righteous war? Who was on the right side? No qualms about fighting in it. It was a righteous cause as far as he was concerned.
But not everyone felt the Great War was a righteous cause. On the Seattle home front, the Industrial Workers of the World, an international labor union known as the Wobblies, are vehemently against the war.
They regarded it as a rich man's war for poor men to die in. So the Wobblies saw labor as an international phenomenon and the economic system as an international phenomenon to push back against.
Through work stoppages and other actions, the Wobblies and their supporters interfere with the logging of spruce for airplanes and fir for shipbuilding.
And the woods were filled with radical labor who poured sugar into gas tanks and spiked the trees and said, we're not going to participate in this military-industrial complex. We're not going to harvest this timber for war. So they were tossed out, blacklisted, and their places were taken by men in uniform.
In the waning days of the war, the Spanish influenza pandemic would hit Seattle. The outbreak would take the lives of millions worldwide. Seattle would be infected by a trainload of troops.
In November of 1918, when the epidemic was really, really intense, if you were seen spitting on the sidewalk, you had to pay a $5 fine instantly. The schools were closed, churches, synagogues, temples were closed, public transportation was closed. 1,600 people did die in King County of influenza.
Knut Berger's father was 4 years old when the epidemic hit here. In a memoir, he recalls how his mother was stricken with the virus.
He remembers his father calling him in and his mother lying there really on her deathbed, and there was a great question as to whether she was going to survive the night. The doctor was there, and he and his father kind of sat vigil with her. But he said, you know, she was alive the next morning and she survived.
But the doctor did not.
We discovered that he died of influenza just a couple of days later. My father was a doctor also, and I think that was, I think that you could tell in his oral history that that really affected him, that knowledge that this guy had sacrificed his life for his patients.
The Great War ends as Germany formally surrenders on November 11th, 1918. In Seattle, there are parades and celebrations, but also the indelible memory of loss. More than 1,600 Washingtonians lost their lives, and many others were scarred by the conflict.
I think the decade 1910 to 1920 is the most powerful and interesting decade in Seattle's history in the 20th century. And there's not an aspect of life you can look at that wasn't transformed.
A footnote about Knut Berger's grandfather, William Hasseltine. He also served in World War II. The Army needed him because of his first-hand knowledge of the French battlefields from World War I. He was able to provide important information as he ended up working on the planning for the invasion of France. Just ahead, much more on MOHAI's World War I exhibit from a man who can speak volumes on the subject.
All of those issues from a century ago resonate today.
Welcome back to CityStream and the World War I America exhibit at MOHAI, and we're with its executive director, Leonard Garfield. Thanks for having us, appreciate it very much. What an exhibit here. Tell me how it all came about.
Well, a few years ago, historians here at MOHAI, working with historians around the country, realized that a very significant anniversary was coming up, the 100th anniversary of World War I. But we realized that most Americans had completely forgotten that war. So we set about to rediscover that lost story. And what we discovered was this incredibly complex, exciting, really riveting story of 100 years ago.
Now, this is really an interactive exhibit because there is so much to see, but also you have an opportunity to look at films at various places.
Well, you know, media was changing 100 years ago, so film was becoming important. Recorded sound, all of that is in this exhibit. So rather than just seeing things behind cases, you actually see real action films from the period, men and women on the front lines as well as the home front. You hear recordings from the period. You actually hear the voices of those who experienced World War I.
Now, 100 years later, what are the parallels, I guess, from the past and now the present?
I think that's probably the most important thing we discovered. There really are parallels. 100 years ago, the world exploded with World War I. The world order completely changed. And in so many ways, we're experiencing that same transformation today. But stories about immigration, the mass movements of people across borders, what does that mean? Here in America, what does it mean to be an American? All of those questions were important 100 years ago. They continue to be at the center of our civic conversation today.
So at that period, after the war as well, there was a lot of unrest here.
Tremendous unrest. You know, it began with the great influenza, the Spanish flu of 1918. The soldiers brought back an illness that literally killed millions of people in this country. But it was more than that. Laborers who had been told that if they sacrificed during the war, they'd be rewarded afterwards, found that their wages were depressed. They lost their jobs. And so Seattle had a great general strike where every worker, from the shipyards to the seamstresses, went on strike, and it literally closed the city down. That's a World War I story that we tell here, but it relates to the issues of equity and fair wages that we're still talking about 100 years later.
Now, this exhibit runs through February, but you have many special programs going on.
Lots of programs. The actual centennial, the armistice, the famous document that ended the war, is coming up on November 11th. We have many programs around that date. But we're going to have conversations and panel discussions and programs for the next few months talking about issues like the Spanish flu, like the general strike. Issues about protests and civil liberties that were very important in World War I continue to be important today. So we're going to look at the war through the lens of today's America and have those conversations over the next few months.
Well, it's a great exhibit and people really need to come and see it because it is so rich in history. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to see it with you, and good luck.
Thank you, Enrique.
Up next on CityStream, a new approach that's instrumental in helping veterans cope with PTSD. CityStream returns from the World War I exhibit at MOHAI. During the war, America's economy took off, fueled by higher wages. Movies became mainstream. This was the first generation to experience recorded sound, and gramophones were in demand. Back then, pop culture provided an escape. Today, the healing power of music is helping veterans in pain, tormented by PTSD. Producer Randy Ng shows us one group who's helping veterans help themselves.
In a way, it's like meditation. I'm in the moment. 3, 4. I'm doing the guitar. I'm not thinking of anything else. My name's Larry Niehaus, and I am a U.S. Marine. I was in the Marine Corps in '72 during the Vietnam era. Playing the guitar causes me to concentrate on something other than the voices in the back of my mind.
The resonation of the guitar itself up against your body, it's very soothing.
Most of it is I just like to be able to play to where I hear it.
It's something that the vets need and deserve. What Guitars for Vets does is we provide 10 lessons to veterans that have PTSD, and it's been found that these lessons, they help the veteran cope with the PTSD better, and at the end of the lessons, they receive a brand new guitar.
I'm Patrick Nettesheim, co-founder of Guitars for Vets, and I'm here with student number 1, co-founder Dan Van Buskirk. We put the healing power of music in the hands of heroes.
I'm Ross Valerie, and we are Journey, and we are asking you to support Guitars for Vets.
It's like the little guy getting recognized by the big guy. It's like an older brother you never had telling you you can do it and not to give up.
A lot of these people come back with serious physical and mental problems. And what Guitars for Vets is trying to do is help these people get their lives back together.
Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4.
I can't tell you the difficulty we had in getting an instructor.
Hang down your head, Tom. My
name is Melissa Johnson. I'm an instructor for Guitars for Vets at the Seattle VA Hospital.
We put up flyers and we weren't able to get an instructor. And then Melissa came out of nowhere and said she wanted to be a part of it.
Hang down your head.
My husband is a veteran. My father, just about every male in my family has served at one time or another. So just bringing a little bit of peace and serenity to somebody else, that's what I love about it.
I do know with my problems that I've been working on for a long time, I ain't the easiest person to put up with sometimes.
I think your index finger.
I think you need more understanding than patience. You need to understand that something that comes natural to you is completely foreign to your student.
I was trained to be an M60 machine gunner. So with the guitar, I can take my hands from doing what I was trained to do with the military to making sound.
Larry, in recognition of your graduation from the program, we'd like to award you this brand new Yamaha guitar.
I like it. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
You ready?
Every Friday we play in the VA chapel here in Seattle, and we're stronger together than we are apart. I think it's an amazing thing.
When I first started, I was doubting myself. I was saying, there's no way I can do this. With this class, I found out it's going to take patience, it's going to take practice, and it's brought me up to knowing that if I do make mistakes, it's not the end of the world.
If you think you've bettered the veteran by learning these skills and feeling more confident in himself, yeah, that's saving a life, because he's making better choices in his life. So yeah, I think she's saving lives by being here.
Love. I love our veterans. I love music. I love playing the guitar. This program lets me combine all three.
When I was younger, I wanted to be rock star. Now that I'm 62 years of age, I can become semi-rock star. As long as I'm making some sound, it's okay with me.
We wouldn't enjoy nearly as much as we do in this country without them. And for that, I'm very grateful.
If you're a military veteran who suffers from PTSD, or you'd like to volunteer your time, go to guitarsforvets.org and click on the Seattle chapter. We'll be right back. That wraps up this episode of CityStream from the Museum of History and Industry. If you'd like to learn more about the exhibits and programs here, just go to MOHAI.org. I'm Enrique Cerna. Thanks for watching. To learn more about CityStream and the Seattle channel, find us on Facebook and Twitter. You can also watch us on Comcast HD channel 321 and on Wave cable channel 721.
You look great.
I was 120 pounds when I was in the Army.
Thank you for coming down.
I use this for cooking. We used to boil eggs in there.
People have been interested in the World War II veterans, so I hope he tells his kids and grandkids about it too.
Thank you very much.